Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 516th meeting of Canterbury Regional Council. The meeting is not being live streamed, but will be recorded, with the recording to be made available on the Council's website. I'd like to invite Councillor Craig Pauling to give a mihi whakatau and a councillor to open with a karakia. I think that'll be Craig as well, or were you going to do that, Lan? Lan will do that. Councillor Lan Farn will do that. Thank you.
Tēnei te ruru te kaukau mai nei ki hai, mā whitiwhiti ki hai, mā rakara. Tūpoko nui o te ruru te reko, he pō, he ao, kaotea, a ti hei, mauri ora. Atu mi tuatahi mi ki nā atua kaharo. A ho mai o kaha, ho mai o aroha ki a mātou I tēnei wā. A ka huri au taka whakaaro ki nā tini aitua ku wehi atu ki te pō haere, hari atura. O rātou ki a rātou tonga mati, tātou ki a tātou tonga ora, a tēnā tātou. Ai, tēnā tātou, ka hui mai nei, kei aro I te tūnui o tēnei whare, te whare o tātou, te kaunihera tai o ki Waitaha, ai roto I te rohi o nai tuahuriri. Nau mai, hara mai, koutou mā, koutou e noho nei, koutou e mātaki nei, koutou e whakarongo kia tātou. Ai, kia koutou mai te eringa o kahukura, ai, ke te hara mai, I ho atu tō taki ki a mātou I tēnei ata, tēnā koutou. Ai, ki nā whanaunga, Benita mā, ki te hara mai ki te tautoko te hui nei, tēnā koutou. Ki nā ringa raupa o te kaunihera nei, o tō mahi, uaua, tēnei tini ki a koutou. Ki nā aku haumi, nā kai kaunihera, tēnā tātou. So kia ora everybody, just setting to open us today, acknowledge things above, things around us and things greater than us, those that have gone before, and to our special community members that have come in today to give us a rack up now, to raise important issues. That's what it's all about. So thank you for coming in, and it's great to see some of our whanaunga here. Benita, thank you, and the rest of our whānau that have come in to support our meeting, and just to our staff and to our councillors. Just looking forward to a great meeting. So I'm going to hand over to Lan. He's going to open us with karakia. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Craig. This is Ka Haia Te Ata, which is about the breaking of a new day. Ka haia te ata, ka hāpara te ata, ka koroki te manu, ka wairori te kutu, ko te ata nui, ka horaina, ka taki te umeri, he pō, he ao, ka awatia. Ti hei mauri ora. Kia ora.
Thank you, councillors. We will continue with the meeting. Our first item on the agenda is apologies. I don't believe we have any apologies. So moving on to item number 3, that's around conflicts of interest. Is there anybody with any conflict of interest on the agenda they'd like to note?
Madam Chair, thank you. It's possibly not a conflict of interest, but I would just like to make fellow councillors and others aware that and I'm sure they've read their agenda, that in the regional hearing panel meeting on the 2nd of July, I stood down due to conflict of interest around a decision-making process, in that I had put a consent in for approval with Environment Canterbury, and possibly just closely related to item 6.9.5, is it? 9.5. But don't believe that my interest is in any greater than the majority of other consent holders in the Canterbury region.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackay, for letting us know about that possible situation, and it is very clear now. So moving on, has anybody else got any other conflicts? There being no further conflicts, we're up to our combined area of public forum deputations and petitions, and I'd like to invite Vanessa Van Hoof to the table, and you have a couple of people with you, so if you would all like to come up to the table and present your petition, that'd be great, and I'll get you to all introduce yourselves. So if you just go, oh, there's Cindy there, she'll show you where to go. Oh, so you can sit down and present or stand up, whichever is more comfy, probably sitting down if that's okay, and just introduce yourselves and then we'll take it from there.
Oh. Ko Vanessa Van Hoof tō whenua no Ōtahi Hau. So I'm Vanessa, I work at Cashmere High School. I'll introduce myself further in my kōrero if that's okay.
Kia ora mai tata katoa, tūtai mi atu ki a koe e tarangatira nau I whakatūtera I tō tātou miringa tēnei wā, nā mi kawana ki a koe, o te rā ki a koe e hoku whaia, tō kara ki a tāhua, au hau whānau mō taputora, nā mi kawana ki a koutou katoa. Ko ai tēnei ko te riki tui ana tōku ingoa, huri tēnei no nā pūmi nai takoto, I a hari mai au, ko nei ki tōtupu I tōku hoa, e whāhana ki tēnei ki te hana, no reira koe ne te tino take I hari mai ko nei, no te wharewa no waitaha hoki ai, e oi anō he take tino pai rau atu tēnei ki a tātou katoa, so nā mihi ki a koutou. My name is Tia Riki, and aloha mai whānau for having my back to you. Just want to acknowledge rangatira for opening us up with the mihi whakatau nā mihi kaunga ki a koe, and our whaia also for the karakia. Just here to support Vanessa. Brilliant 4,000 word signatures for that kaupapa of getting our reo tika and the words. Even though we know it's a robot, we want that robot to do the right way of pronouncing our kupu Māori. So nā mihi kaunga kia koutou.
Kora koutou katoa, ko ai au katoa hauira me ki mangata pō tāpirahi, e te tiro ana ki tā kino au tai tōpirau, ka hoi atu waka o kira hoi pō ki te awarere awapuka, Tiri o te aupari, no reira tina koutou katoa. Kora koutou, ko Lucy Schrader Manuira tōku ingoa. I'm lucky enough to work alongside Miss Van Hoof at Tingo Kaukura at Cashmere High School. Yeah, tina koutou katoa.
Te hei mauri ore, ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama, te hei mauri ore. Kia rangi nui I tūnei, tēnā koe, kia papatu nuku tāpoto nei, tēnā koe. Ki te pari I tūnei, tēnā koe. Kia koutou ko ngā kaimahi mo te kaunihira waitaha, kaunihira taiao I waitaha, tēnā koutou. Ki ngā tuahuriri hei mana whenua, tēnā koutou. Ko waio I tūnei, roha mai. Ko te ahu pātiki te maunga tāwharau, ko tāwharo te awa whaipainga, ko Ngāti Kōwhi mana raua ko Ngāti Airehi ngā iwi. Ko Vanessa Van Hoof tōku ingoa no Ōtahi Hau. Aroha ki te tangata, aho ko wai, aho ko no hea, tēnā koutou. So I wanted to say thank you very much for giving me some time to speak to you all. Sorry, I'll stand close to the mic in case this fucks it up. Yeah, as I'm Kāko at Te Ringo Kapikura, and I'm here to present, as you've seen on the agenda, a petition to correct the pronunciation of the Te Reo Māori in the Christchurch Bus Exchange. I thought before presenting the petition itself, I'd just like to explain to you how I came to be here. You'll have heard from my mihi that I'm not myself Māori. I'm of Scottish and Irish descent, but I've been learning Te Reo Māori for just about 5 years now. And as a history teacher, I'm very aware of our obligations under Te Reo Waitangi. So he tino taonga Te Reo Māori. Te Reo Māori is one of those taonga protected under both the preamble of the treaty, where Queen Victoria undertook to protect the possessions of the rangatira, and also under Article 2, where it clearly states that rangatira will retain possessions of their taonga. So I'm sure you're all aware, I feel like I'm telling you something you already know, that the Waitangi Tribunal did declare Te Reo Māori one of those taonga that was protected back in 1986, but I feel like we've still got quite a long way to go. In Ōtautahi, we know what it's like to go through that waiting process and the frustration. We've waited on land zoning issues being settled, we've waited on our houses being rebuilt, we've waited on our schools being rebuilt, but we haven't waited for nearly 40 years for our decision to be fully implemented, and we haven't waited, those of us who are not Māori haven't waited 180 years for Te Tiriti to be fully realised. So for myself, I began learning Te Reo Māori because at my kura there were a lot of students arriving from kura kaupapa Māori, and I actually just wanted to kōrero with them in their first language. But then I realised a lot of those ākonga Māori would actually perform better in their assessments if they could do them in Te Reo Māori. But they couldn't, not because it is one of our official languages, but actually because I couldn't mark their work. So I was the impediment to that. So as a result, I really wanted to pursue fluency. And because I'm a bus user, I've done a lot of my study on board the buses and in the interchange. And when you're busy studying here whakamārama and you hear rangi ora, it just throws your space a little bit. So you will have heard from my pronunciation, aroha mai, that it's, you know, a work in progress. And that's probably because I come from that generation where the awa of Waimakariri was Waimak, you know, and it's been that input over 40 plus years now. I won't say quite how many, but enough. And it's really hard. I feel like my generation is constantly fighting to overcome those inputs. So for me, I was sitting in the bus exchange with my tamariki one day, and I heard rangi ora about 4 times really loudly over a 20-minute wait. And I felt this growing sense of frustration. My tamariki actually have very good pronunciation, much better than mine, because I've worked really hard to say the kupu correctly. Their kāko have worked really hard to say those kupu correctly. News presenters have worked really hard to say those kupu correctly. Children's TV presenters have done the same. And they will have conversations and someone will say, how did you like going to Taupo? And they'll come back with, oh, Taupo was amazing. So, but I was sitting there and I could feel all of that collective mahi kind of being undone by this repeated, loud, reinforced incorrect pronunciation. So I started to reflect on that and I thought, I'm Pākehā, this is not my taonga, but I found it really frustrating. So I thought if I was a Mātua Māori in that position, and then these were my tamariki and this was a taonga tuku iho, a treasure being passed down for them, that would be truly quite an unpleasant experience. So that made me want to say to you as a council that I don't think we should be passing on a raru to our young people. We shouldn't be passing on a difficulty, a challenge like that. I don't want those currently learning Te Reo Māori to be fighting their brains to get the correct pronunciation because they've had repeated incorrect inputs. I don't want our ākonga Māori standing to kōrero for NCA assessments or standing for mana kōrero or standing on their own marae and having their pronunciation adversely affected by input that they've received in a public space. I want to see the mana of Te Reo Māori respected and the correct pronunciation normalised. I hope that this isn't too much to ask. All around the motu there is a real movement at the moment to get Te Reo Māori correctly pronounced and respected. Even private businesses have been pulled out for their TV advertisements. So Environment Canterbury, as a Crown agency and a partner to Te Tiriti, I think should be leading the way in a public space. So yes, I'm here to present to you the 4,334 signatures to the petition and also a summary of the whakaaro that people have put forth. The kaihaina, the signatories, predominantly have said that correct pronunciation is about respect, and they want to see that respect in a public space. And I think that's a reasonable expectation. Kei te haere mai, te maharu, o te maramo te reo Māori. September is Māori Language Month is coming up. I think it would be a really powerful thing if ECAN could make an announcement leading into Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori that something would be done about this situation. Me mahi tahi tātou, he whakatipe, let us all work together to address. Hareira tēnā koutou. Oh, here's the. So these are.
Thank you.
And I did a quick summary of the people's
Thoughts. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming along today and bringing us this petition. We really apologise for the pronunciation at the bus exchange, which this morning I referred to as a bus shelter. I got laughed out, but it goes right back to when I grew up in Christchurch, and there certainly wasn't a flash bus exchange like that. It was more like battling the weather in Cathedral Square. And we will take every step we can to rectify this situation. Oh, I forgot, no one will be able to hear me on the recording, but you're the most important people because you're in the room. And we will ask staff to continue with the investigation into this, which they're already doing, and come out with a solution. We will also add to that resolution, I think, that we would like to take our best endeavours to have that done by National Māori Language Week, which is in September. And that's not far away, so that gives us a real goal. And I too am totally offended that that's in the public system. So thank you very much. Did any councillors have any questions they wanted to ask?
Sorry, it's not a question, it's just a comment. Thank you so much, Vanessa, and your crew for coming here today. I just wanted to respond. You asked if it was too much to ask in terms of getting this change. It's not too much to ask, and I'm so glad that Jenny has actually just apologised in that way, because that is up, it's Te Tiriti is up to all of us to uphold, and that should have been something that we had turned our mind to. Thank you so much for raising it, and now we can address it in this way, and I really appreciate that. So good order.
Thank you. Any other councillors would like to make a comment or ask a question? All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to have a student from the school here, and I hear you're a strong leader at the school. It's Vanessa, isn't it? You, Vanessa, too? Oh, you're Lucy. Sorry. Lucy, I got that totally wrong, didn't I? So thank you for coming along, and I'm sure it's a real learning experience to come to a democratic organisation like Canterbury Regional Council, and I think it's good that you heard Craig open with his mihi, and then Lan respond with a karakia, and we're trying to embed these practices in our way of operating, and we have a fantastic team called the Tuia team that's working on these things. So that's why it's a little bit more embarrassing, I think, that we've got this this voice problem in our bus exchange. But the thing is, in commercial reality, we bought a system that was we went out to tender for, and I'm afraid maybe we just should get rid of that system. But anyway, I'll leave it up to staff, and I'm sure they'll find a resolution. So right now we need to have a resolution. And the resolution is going to be that we receive the petition requesting correct pronunciation of the Te Reo Māori names at the bus exchange, and we're referring the matter to the Chief Executive, and we would like the resolution to be by, which week is it? The first week in September, Māori Language Week. I'm adding that in. So I will move that from the chair, and Councillor Craig Pauling is seconding that. I'll put that to the. Oh, would anybody like to speak to it?
It goes without saying that I'm really stoked that you came today and put this in front of us, even though it's a mamai. It's really important what you've done, putting that out there and taking a stand. I actually had a similar experience recently with a GJ Gardner ad on TV where they mispronounced Taranaki repetitively, and that was the thing that got me. And I sat there, I was over on the Tai Potini, and I sat there and wrote a complaint to the Advertising Complaints Authority. Luckily, some other whanaunga up in Taranaki also went straight to the company and they withdrew the ad. So I understand what it feels like, but actually I think it's important because some of us get desensitised to it. We hear mispronunciation a lot and we just accept it, which, you know, is sort of a protection mechanism, I think, within us. So, yeah, thank you for raising that and for bringing it to us. Tēnei te mihi kia koe moto mahi ai tēnei koe.
Was there anybody else wanting to make a comment? Well, thank you very much, councillors. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. There being no one against, I'll declare that resolution carried, and we will be getting back to you and communicating with the outcome of where we're going, and that shouldn't take too long, and giving you a progress report of how we're going with it. So thank you very, very much. So that's the end of the deputation now, or the presentation. So thank you, and we'll see you again. Just feel free to leave whenever you like. We won't be offended. So we're up to the more bureaucratic part now, the minutes of the meeting. So are there any matters of accuracy relating to the minutes that anybody wanted to raise? Councillor Pauling. That's all right, you do that. Oh, you better put your thing on. Put your speaker on. Hey, Geneva. Speaker.
In relation to the mihi I did last meeting, where I acknowledged the Queen's Birthday Honours recipients, and the minutes just didn't show that Harata Tiaka should have been listed, so I just wanted to make that amendment, please.
Thank you. We've got that recorded. Any other? Oh, yes.
Sorry, I'm embarrassed to have one myself. As I wrote the minutes on page 12 at the top, the deputation and petition. There was a vote to receive it and refer to the chief executive, and it was from Councillor Marshall, Councillor Hand. So that will be in the signed minutes.
Thank you much, Council Secretary. That's excellent. Anybody else would like to make a note of any changes? All right. So I think we'll move the recommendation then that the council receives and confirms with the corrections noted by the council secretary as a complete record of the minutes in the meeting held on 18th of June. I'll call for a councillor to move that resolution. Moved by Councillor Marshall and seconded by Councillor Hands. All those in favour, please say aye. That's carried. The minutes. We move on from the minutes now, and the next issue is item 6, matters arising from the minutes. Do we have any matters arising from the minutes? Yeah, Councillor Pauling.
Very on theme for today. It's just a point 9.5 in the minutes, page 47, around the follow up to the local government statement, and the te reo headings were being worked on. Just a bit of a progress update if that's happened yet or when that might happen. Sorry. Do we know?
I can confirm the headings have been finalised, and you'll recall that the resolution was to delegate to the Chief Executive to approve the statement once they had been. I've got a memo in my inbox at the moment in draft to put to the Chief Executive to do that, and then the statement will go onto the website, be finalised.
Thank you, Catherine. All right. So any other matters arising? All right. Do we need to have a resolution around that? No, we won't need a resolution about that. That will just be noted. So we're moving along now to agenda item 7, which covers our committee reports. So our first committee that's reporting back today is the Standing Committee of the Performance Audit and Risk Committee. I'll invite Councillor John Sunkel to deal with that. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item, would those members of the Audit and Risk Committee please advise if there are any corrections required in the minutes? If there are none, then would someone please move that we confirm them as a true and accurate record? Thank you, Councillor Edge, seconded Councillor Mackay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Gets carried. Moving then to the substance of the report. Of note, item 4.2, the internal audit plan, is a move forward on where we have been in the past. We now have a 3-year plan in place, which is keeping our external auditors happy, and that we have a process in place to look at risk and audit over a period of time. And so we articulate 3 of those up front and leave a space available for any issue that may from time to time arise that we might need to give consideration to. So any questions on the rest of the report, which I would basically take as read?
Just a comment, just to really thank our independent auditor, Graham McLean, for his contributions to the committee. Sorry, not a member of the committee, independent member, and the work he's done to provide good advice to the committee.
So, Councillor Sunknall, you're moving those recommendations?
I will move the recommendations 1 through 3.
And who's going to second those? Councillor Craig, Grant Edge. All those in any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? There being none, that's carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Sunknall, for that report. We're up to 7.1.2, and this is the Regulation Hearing Committee, and I'll call on Councillor Claire Mackay to present this report, please, Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 7.1.2 is we are being asked to receive for our information the minutes of the Regulation Hearing Committee. There's 2 lots of minutes. They are now both confirmed, one being the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of June and the other 2nd of July, which was confirmed at this morning's meeting of the Regional Hearing Committee. I'll take them as read in the agenda, so unless anybody's got any points of clarification or comments they'd like to make, I will then go on and move the recommendations that that Council receives the confirmed minutes of the Regulation Hearing Committee held on the 18th of June and receives, and we can actually put the 2nd of July there in the same sentence. Thank you.
And the seconder is Councillor Lan Fan. Anybody wish to speak to those recommendations? All right. We'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? There being no one against, we'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. We're up to number 7.2 now, the joint committees. I'll ask Councillor Phil Clearwater to speak to the Greater Christchurch Public Transport Committee report.
Thank you, Jenny. And Council will be aware that your representatives on this joint committee, Chair Jenny and myself and Councillor Tane Apanui, and I think for this meeting actually Councillor Vicky Southwood also attended. It's good to have interest in what the joint PT committee are doing. I'm happy to move the recommendations that the Council receive the Public Transport Joint Meeting Report, because you'll be aware that in fact these are the minutes of the Joint Public Transport Committee itself, not ours. But I'm happy to make some comments about matters that were discussed briefly. One is the Metro monitoring report gave a lot of acknowledgement to NZTA for the subsidisation that we as a Greater Christchurch had received, really, so that the public transport services could continue during the COVID-19 lockdown, and it was a really good contribution to ensuring the resilience of Christchurch, really. And so the services continued throughout the lockdown. There's reference in the reports to that, in fact, encouragement to people to use PT during that time with a free Metro card campaign, and our portfolio group actually from now on will be looking at concessions around the fair pricing of the bus rides. The other important point that I want to refer to is that our own Environment Canterbury transport team were sincerely thanked by the Joint Committee for the way the public transport operations continued throughout that period, and there was a lot of appreciation by members of that committee for a really sterling effort by our transport staff. I know during the lockdown, a lot of staff worked very, very hard, and certainly that included our transport people. So if senior staff directors might pass that on to the staff who were concerned and worked so very hard. So with that, I'll just move the recommendations I referred to.
Right. Call for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Tane Apanui. Anybody wishing to discuss that report? Councillor Marshall.
Just referring to the minutes, and that through the chair we can pass on back to the committee that on page 3 or 4 of the minute document that should be referring to Councillor Reid rather than Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. Do we need to do?
No,
yeah, that's noted. All right. Anybody else wishing to make a comment? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? There being nobody opposed, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're moving on to item 8, which is around working groups, and the working group reporting back today is Councillor Pauling, who leads the Council Planting Regeneration Working Group. Over to you, Craig.
Kia ora anō koutou. Yes, I'm pleased to provide a further update on the work of the Planting and Regeneration Working Group, otherwise known as Me Uru Rako, and from our meeting held on the 25th of June. Our meeting dealt with 4 key issues in relation to identifying key partners, including territorial authorities, Ngāi Tahu, community groups and industry already doing great work. We looked at a draft value proposition to sort of give our the program a bit more depth in terms of what it's looking at. We gained an overview of the relevant ECAN funded projects that we've been supporting in the last 5 to 10 years, and also looked at a consideration of external experts that from similar or existing models to help inform our work. And going forward, we'll be continuing to look at the results of the sort of internal stocktake of what we're doing on our own land, as well as supporting others to help flesh out the program that would be considered as part of the LTP coming up. So, kia ora, I'd like to move that we receive this paper and the notes and actions from our meeting.
And I'll call for a seconder for that paper, seconded by Councillor Grant Edge. Anybody else wishing to ask questions or speak to this resolution? Councillor Clearwater.
Craig, thank you for this report. It's really encouraging, and I'm just wondering too, there's clearly the in-kind investments by people's volunteering that's been a huge part of this. And I'm just wondering if you think that we have sort of sufficient acknowledgement for the people who contribute in such a way, or the ways perhaps that we could add to that.
That's definitely a big part of our discussions at the moment, Bill, in terms of the thing that we've really been pushing is that the last thing ECAN really wants to do is go out to the community that's already been doing amazing work and sort of act like we're going to save the region in terms of biodiversity and restoration. So yeah, acknowledging the existing work that's going on is a really forefront of our minds. So when we launch the program, or when that gets more detailed, that'll be a big part of it.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Right, there being no one, I'll put that resolution to receive the report to the council. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There being none, I'll declare that that carried. We're up to item 9 now, and this is the Tumu Taio Mana Whenua experts on council, and I have a great pleasure in asking the Deputy Chair, Peter Scott, to speak to this report. Thank you, Peter.
Kia ora tātou, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
I know that we had it around the other way, but I'm really pleased for this because I feel I've got a leg on either side of this, having been part of the last council where we had 2 embedded councillors. So it gives me great pleasure to talk to them. And just a little explanation about this. So we're going to move and second this motion, and then General Counsel Catherine Shackey is going to come up and walk us through the paper. Catherine, that's correct, Catherine? Thank you. So I guess there are a few people we need to acknowledge in terms of getting us to where we are today. And I note they aren't in the room, so I acknowledge them. I acknowledge Ray Simon from Wairua, Liz Brown from Taumutu, and also Ricky Tainui from Onuku in terms of the work that they've done to move us forward, and specifically work that Jenny and I were involved in with them in terms of some discussions to get us to where we are today. And the thing I think that comes through with that is the absolute honesty that we had in those discussions when we were talking about how do we move ourselves forward. So it's really good. Also, I'd like to acknowledge my fellow councillors sitting around the table, again, for their honesty in terms of trying to get us in the right space with this. And I know that we've had a lot of wordsmithing and putting commas in different places and moving words around in sentences and all that sort of stuff that we do. And so we're reasonably comfortable with that, and hence Catherine is going to walk us through this so that we understand completely where we are with this document. Like it is that important to us. And also I'd like to acknowledge Te Rapatuia in terms of the conversations that we had, and I know you in the room today, Benita. I'm not sure if there's anybody else here from our Te Rapatuia meeting, that last meeting that we had, but I acknowledge you and your input and your words that you've given us in terms of that. Again, a person that's helped us along the journey is our acting chief executive, Stephanie Rixica, who's been instrumental, I guess, in kicking this down the road into the right direction. Stephanie, so thank you very much for that in terms of your work on doing that. But the person I'd like to point out, I probably shouldn't do this, but he's sitting here, so is Julian, and the work, Julian, that you've done. I said to Julian, look, this is a tough space, Julian. And his reply to me was, I love doing this stuff. And heaps of rewrites, Julian, heaps of people giving you their opinions on both sides of the fence, as happens. But you've come through really well. And I think we've got a document now that we can move forward with, which is great. So Tumutaio Mana Whenua experts that we're going to have, and looking forward to that, having that input at this table and the guidance that they give us. And it's good to know, from my point of view, having been part of the last council with, and I acknowledge Elizabeth Cunningham and Young Cromwell in terms of their input that they have given us. And the great thing about having that sort of comment, and they didn't speak for all the Papatapu Runanga, and they couldn't, but they gave us a sense of where our discussion was going, where the hurdles were, and the things that we needed to know, and provided sound advice to us. Sometimes putting the hand up, saying, "Well, we'll be really careful if you do that." So that's what we need. And helps us. And I think my feeling is that we lead in this space in terms of trying to do that and looking for a way forward. And we know there are lots of risks, and we know there are lots of challenges in terms of how we move forward in this space. And I guess we look to central government for leadership in some of the really difficult areas that we have. Sometimes that is more difficult than actually being able to get some sense of where we are as a council, as a regional council. But I'm really happy where we are. We were challenged on our mihi whakatau by Te Mari Tau in terms of water, and we're up for that debate. We really are. And I see this whare as a safe place to have those discussions, where we won't be pushing our finger at blame at anyone, but we need to take on board and we need to try and move forward. So that's how I see it. That's a personal view of how I see it, and no doubt others will get to talk to us also, but that's how I see it. And right now, we just spoke about this morning, right now, the challenge that we have as a council, just as a council, going forward is massive in terms of the RPS that we must adjust, the coastal plan that we're going to embark on now, which is really important to Papatapu Runanga in that space.
the RMA reforms that are coming our way, and also freshwater reform, and especially ki uta ki tai. And I talked to, and I know you about this before, and you know that our absolute interpretation of what that means to us, we need to dig into that, because you know we hear it means different things to different people. So we need to have consistency across that, so that we can have that right discussion at this table. So that's good. So lots of challenges there. So it'd be good to have people sitting alongside us. Tumutai will help us across the region, across our whole region, you know, from the Clarence to the Waitaki, in terms of maintaining our strong leadership in the position of water reforms. We've gone a long way. We've got some really good plans, and that's been hand in hand with Mana Whenua. So my hope is that we can continue with that and walking forward in this, what I see as a partnership. Yeah. I'll just move to the recommendations. So the recommendations that we have, and I'll read. Do you want to speak, Catherine? Sorry, I'm well ahead of myself, sorry.
Kia ora, councillors. You've heard Peter's explanation of the history and the long history and genesis of these roles. The paper we bring to you today recommends that the council endorse these two Tumutai roles, and I certainly found the conversation at Te Ropatuia explaining the phrase Tumutai incredibly powerful. Tumu, a mark of respect, but also the trunk of the tree from which everything else flows. There are a couple of points in the paper I want to discuss quickly with you and to clarify, and one of those, Peter, is the resolutions themselves, hence the suggestion that we press pause there. The first clarification is in paragraph 16 on page 79 of your agenda, and there's a mistake in that paragraph. The paragraph states that it would be prohibited for the Tumutai to vote. The wording should, of course, be it would be unlawful under the Local Government Act for them to vote. The second clarification is in paragraph 21 on page 80. And forgive me, there are a couple of misnumberings there, but it's the paragraph on page 80 that describes the role. And we need to add some extra text into that, an extra bullet point at the end. And my suggestion is that the bullet point should be, so this is an activity underpinning the role description to support council to make informed decisions when they execute and perform in the best interests of the Canterbury region, the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon them by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 or any other act. And you'll be pleased to know that the contract proposed between this council and Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu will also reflect that obligation and the obligation that the Tumutai comply with the oath as if they had sworn it the way you all did when you took office. The third clarification then is to the resolutions themselves. And I propose that instead of the two recommendations that are reflected in the paper, there in fact be three. And they be, firstly, that the council endorses the establishment of the role of Tumutai, Mana Whenua experts, for an initial one-year term. Secondly, that the council instructs the CE to establish those roles. And then the third resolution is as it's written there, currently number 2. Otherwise, I'm here for any questions you might have.
Any questions for Catherine? I'll just check. Have we got the wording correct, Council Secretary?
Yes, would you like me to?
No, that's all right, just as long as we don't need any more details, that's good. All right, Councillor Edge.
Sorry, just it should be acting CE, would that be the correct?
I think just CE, and that's to the role rather than to the person. And so depending on timeframes, we might or might not have a permanent CE.
All right, Councillor Scott is going to move the resolution.
Yes, I'm happy with those amendments that you've made to the paper, Catherine, to move that resolution.
All right, and I, as the chair, am going to second that resolution. Now we'll open the floor up for discussion and we'll debate around the resolution. So everyone's clear about the resolutions? Cool. All right, I'm calling for speakers. I'll reserve my right to speak and I'll speak shortly. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Farn.
Thank you, Chair. I just really first of all, want to congratulate Council for where we've got to today, and also our partnership conversation that we've had with Ngārunanga and Te Ranganga o Ngāi Tahu. I just wanted to really briefly reflect as a Pākehā Kiwi who understands at least a little bit about Aotearoa's history and the fundamental importance of Te Tiriti, and also the immense loss and injustices suffered by Māori since then and to this day, and the need for an active and meaningful partnership approach with mana whenua. I wholeheartedly support the establishment of these roles. I was really proud to be part of the previous council who sought to establish the permanent mana whenua representation, which Peter outlined, and unfortunately we were unsuccessful. But I'm equally proud to be part of this council today who is moving forward despite this. As Peter also outlined, where we are today is not an ideal solution to mana whenua representation, but I really do see it as a step in acknowledging that we must continue to and grow our advocacy in changing our governance systems to adequately and meaningfully uphold Te Tiriti. So, yep, it's a positive step, which I'm really pleased to support, and we must continue to do more. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Farn. I'm calling on other councillors who would like to speak. Councillor Marshall.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Farn's sentiment in that it's fantastic that we've been able to reach this point with Te Ranganga, that we've come to an agreement for these roles, and it's really important to highlight that this is just one step in the process to get to where we need to go, and it's just highlighting another failing that society moves so much faster than the law, and that we need to keep up our advocacy not only in this realm but across all matters which we have power to get the law to catch up with where we're going as a progressive society, and to really show that true inclusion and just legal framework. I'm really excited to what these roles will bring to council, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it implemented.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie.
Yes, yeah, I'd like to express my support for this. It's not perfect, it's not enough in my opinion, but it's a good start, and I'm happy to risk a High Court challenge or you know, whatever comes our way, because it's worth it in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ian Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too very supportive of these recommendations, and I'm being persuaded by the advice from previous council and councillors of the value of these roles, albeit in a slightly different context. So I'm very happy to support these recommendations, and perhaps we'll just note that although this is for an initial one-year term, there is an expectation that this will be ongoing and hopefully in perpetuity.
Who else would like to speak? Councillor
Kia ora. I'd just like to echo the comments from others around the table. I don't want to hold us up too long with speaking too much, but for me, I really value the relationship that Environment Canterbury has built over many years with Ngāi Tahu, and I wish to see this continue. I do wish to see these roles progress. I'm really excited about what they can bring to the table, and like Ian over on the other side there, have heard many stories and have had many dealings with those who were part of the previous council and the iterations of the CWMS as we've come through that, and the value of having Ngāi Tahu at this table, I think is very understated. So really happy that we're doing this today, and just really excited to see where it takes us.
Thank you, Councillor. The next speaker will be Councillor Vicky Southwood.
I would like to say, you can tell from my accent that I'm British and I'm a relatively recent immigrant, and it's over the 8 years I've been here, I've come to really value and feel it's such a wonderful thing that New Zealand has this Indigenous culture and all wisdom that you bring, and you know, it's such a privilege to have that here. And I know that, you know, we don't have anything like Māori culture in the UK, and I think New Zealand is very, very fortunate to have you, and your tenacity in continuing to argue and demand that the treaty is upheld is remarkable and admirable. And as I've been here, you know, I was quite taken aback when I realised that parents who were from New Zealand, who are my age, at kindy, when my children went to kindy here and started learning Māori language, nursery rhymes and so on, that people of my age who grew up in New Zealand didn't know the words, that they couldn't pronounce the words, harking back to the point about the exchange, bus exchange pronunciation as well. And I do feel though that you know, so much progress is now being made, and it's so important that organisations like Environment Canterbury are really at the forefront of continuing to push for that, and very much like Councillor Mackenzie has just said, you know, that we do sometimes have to push and take some risks in order to make progress and in order to achieve the opportunities that there are to be made. And so thank you for, you know, everybody who's helped us get to here, and let's keep going with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southwood. The next speaker will be Councillor Grant Edge.
Just quickly, I'm 100% supportive of the recommendations, and I think it's a step in the right direction. It's a forward-thinking step, and perhaps puts us back into a position of honouring the treaty partnership, but also it's having those experts around the table to provide some advice to councillors and staff as well on those mana whenua issues is really important. There are issues that the Regional Council has to consider going forward. In fact, more important in the future that we do so. So, yeah, I'm keen to get this underway as soon as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Edge. Are there any other speakers that wish to speak? Councillor Clearwater.
Thank you. I also am supportive of the recommendations. During the recess week, I had the privilege really of going up to the Bay of Islands and going to Waitangi, the first visit I had made there. And I learned, while I have read over the years, it was a wonderful experience being there. But I guess it also stressed for me the importance of having a genuine partnership, or at least aiming for that. And I see this as a big step, as Grant alluded to, in the right direction, but it's only an interim step in terms of the huge, and I guess, social injustices that have been, you know, put upon Māori. And my ancestors were in Aotearoa at the time of the signing of the treaty. But I think that this is a really good step forward to achieve the objective of having fair representation. And I would hope too that a future step for us will be that we support the change in legislation that the previous council have asked for. I also want to make sure that I thank staff for all the huge work that has been done around this report leading to this, and also to acknowledge the great work that previous councillors, Elizabeth Cunningham and Ian Cramwell, have done too. So that's really all I want to say, but I'm very pleased that we are at this point where we are today.
Thank you, Councillor Clearwater. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Pauling.
Oh, tēnā tātou. Ka tūau i nā nei ki te tautoko te kaupapa nei o nā tumutaio. Tuatahi mihi ki a koe, Peter, moto mihi kupu whakatūwhero o tātou nei kaupapa. mo tō mihi kia Julian, kaimahi mā, mo te Roputuia, ai, tēnei te mihi ki a koe. So I really just wanted to stand and support this important kaupapa and acknowledge Peter for outlining some of the history, and of course acknowledging our staff and the work we've done. And of course it's been full of up and downs in the last while, and you know, it's involved research and debate and discussion and reflection, and so it should. This is a historical and significant thing we're doing, and I don't think that was lost on any of us. That's why it was passionately discussed and questioned, just at this table, but also with our partners. And I think that's the important thing, that we've also done this in conjunction with mana whenua, with Te Roputuia, and I take a lot of heart from that it wasn't done. It's not been done lightly, and I think that's really important that we acknowledge that. I think, you know, we've talked about it. People have mentioned it already today, that where we're at with the current law does need to look at, and that's something that we can't do. We can only do what we're proposing to do today. But that's something that, like Phil has said, that we need to keep continuing to move forward on. And acknowledging the people that have held the role here in the last 2 terms, actually. So Elizabeth Cunningham and Yayan Cranwell, but also Donald Couch, who really started something here when the government actually provided that meaningful role here at ECAN. And I think it's something that I've reflected on, is that it's hard when you've been provided that and then that's been taken away as well, even harder. You know, with Yayan and Elizabeth on the last term, and that being reinforced with some of our councillors we still have around the table, you know, the value of that role. And when I was dealing with this myself, I asked myself a bunch of questions, and I did share that with my colleagues. And they were around, do we believe we have obligations under the Treaty of Waitangi to mana whenua? And I just leave that to other people to think about. Do we want to have a relationship with mana whenua, a meaningful relationship with mana whenua? Can we do our job and fulfill those obligations under the treaty without them here with us? So there's all these questions that I was contemplating, and you know, you can answer them yourself. But you know, when I reflect on them, I'm left with thinking there's no other option but to continue what we're doing and to support the Timbri Tile roles. And one of the things that we talked about at Te Roputuia and that I mentioned was, and Peter sort of alluded to it before, in talking about the work that Julian's gone through. And I'm reminded of a whakatauki, he mahi kai hoaka, he mahi kai takata, and which refers to the working of pounamu. And I spoke about it at Te Roputuia that, like I said at the start of my corridor just now, so it should take hard work and determination to get the best taonga, the best prize. That's how pounamu is made in its natural state, but it's also the journey that you go on to find it and to work it and to bring it into a form that can be utilised. So I think that's not lost on me, and hopefully it's not lost on others. And yeah, just really wanted to thank our councillors for dealing with this issue and progressing it since we came into office in October, and for the way we've worked with Te Roputuia to get here. So just really want to thank everybody and just totally support what we're doing. So kia ora, tā ora.
Thank you, Councillor Pauling. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? That I will speak now as the seconder to the resolution. I'd like to say that I feel absolutely privileged to be elected and be the chair at a time where Canterbury Community Council is looking for another way forward to progress our treaty partnership and our relations with Mana Whenua in New Zealand. We shouldn't have had to wait all this time to have the actual intentions of the British Crown enacted in our land. I believe we'd be in a different place if we'd looked at that treaty from Mana Whenua's interpretation right from the start. And I think that there's a saying in English, and well, it's my saying anyway, I don't know where it comes from, but it's about always look for another way forward. And that's how I've worked in my life. The law is there, but there's always other ways forward. And I just want to congratulate all the staff and the people who've gone before me and the elected members and anybody else, particularly the chairs of the Papatapu Runanga, who have been on this journey and have got it to where it is. I think it's really exciting because I think we're in a space where there are terrible, wicked issues facing our planet. And just yesterday, we got reminded of that when Elizabeth sent round a paper about humans being on a collision course with the planet. And unfortunately, I always cry when I think about that. But, you know, we've taken an oath of office where our duty is to do our job to the best interests of the people of Canterbury. And I believe getting other voices around the table to give us a different perspective is empowering. And that's what we'll have with these roles. And we'll firm up our partnership in a way that couldn't have been done unless we did something like this. So I want to congratulate all the councillors and all the staff and everybody who's been involved. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much. Now I suppose I have to move it. I'd like to move this resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody against? There not being anybody against, we'll declare it carried. And I think it's just fantastic.
Me waiho te whakaro o te democracy ki ta taha. Ko te kaupapa matua o tēnei whenua te biculturalism. E he ka mā, ke te piraki a mātou ki te whakanui au o koutou nei kaha. Ki te whakatika, ka whawhai ka meha meha a pāna ki tō tahi, tō tātou nei, ko tahi taka. Ai, ka huri a hau ki tētahi whakatauki, mihero ki au. Ko te kai o te rakatira, te kōrero, ne? E kari, ko te kai o te atua, te whakaroko. Ne? Kei konei mātou, ka rakatira, ahakoa I ruka I tēnei tepu, ahakoa, kei kora, ahakoa, e noho tahi mai nei. Kei raru I te mano o tō tātou nei reo māo. Kei raru I te mano o tō tātou nei tāia. Kei raru I te mōhio taka o tō tātou nei tāoka tuku iho. Kei konei ka iwi Māori, kei nua I o koutou katoa ki te whakanui ai I o koutou. Ki te pirakia, ki te huri kei rotu I te reo prawa, ki te whakamōhio atu ki a tātou katoa, e pāniki tō mātou nei tino hiahia I tēnei wā. Tēnā koutou katoa. In an attempt to make this brief, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you very much. When I reflect on Environment Canterbury, I reflect on brave, courageous decision makers that do things outside of the box in order for the rest of the world to follow. You know, I liken it to an arrowhead or a toki and adze. What happens is the arrowhead penetrates the hard stuff. It works a way through it to essentially create understanding, to create new processes in order for us to achieve not democracy, because the number one kaupapa of this whenua is biculturalism first. Once we have established that, then we can build by democracy. So with that understanding, I want to thank everyone here for this whakatauki that pops into my mind is the food, the essence of leadership is to speak to one another. Irrespective of where you're from, irrespective of your value systems, diversity, heiaha. But the real food, the real essence of leadership is to listen. So, having been heard today, irrespective of the challenges of our last council, irrespective of the last 200 odd years, we are here to thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your manawatiti, your courageous hearts in this difficult period. We're here to thank you, and we're also here to support you in however the future looks. O tira, I ruku I tērā whakaro, mena ka haha te tuna ki te roto, ka haha te reo ki te kaika, ka haha ka takata whenua. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, o tira, tēnā tātou katoa. O taringa whakarongo, kia rite, kia rite, hei kia mau, hui, tā hui, watiki, maraka, maraka, hui, watiki, maraka, maraka, tēnei te urute, go, neki, hai, mawhiti, mawhiti,
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I put the speaker on then, but I didn't do it until you were a wee bit into it, so sorry about that, but there's some of it recorded. All right, moving on. Where are we up to? 9.2 we're up to. Now, we have done all the things we were supposed to do there, have we, Louise? Everything's correct? Yes. All right. We're up to number 9.2 is approval of the submission on the National Environment Standards for Air Quality. Councillor Scott, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's a bit of a come down after after that, unfortunately. But this is just a matter of process that we have in front of us in terms of our council business, and this is the submission as Jenny has outlined, as Madam Chairman has outlined, in terms of the proposed amendments to the National Air Standard, National Environmental Standard Air Quality. Substantially, the work on this has been done by Elizabeth, and I know she's a bit, Councillor Mackenzie, but I know she's a bit nervous about that. But the whole council has seen that piece of work, and we're happy with it. So I would just like to move that the recommendation, reports on page 20, but 90, sorry, but the recommendation is that approves the Environment Canterbury submission on proposed amendments to the National Environmental Standard on Air Quality. And I'd like to thank Claire for her work. I don't think she's here today, but Claire Patterson for her work on this, and also for Taflin for your work on this. So thank you. So I'll move that.
I'm calling for a seconder, seconded by Elizabeth McKenzie. Any further debate on, or people wanting to ask questions or clarification around this issue? Councillor Clearwater.
Could someone just let me know why, in fact, we're not able to go further with the submission in relation to other pollutants? Vehicle emissions being one example. Or perhaps we do.
Have we got Peter?
I could stumble through that for you.
I can address it if you want. Yeah. So the standards specifically related to particulate matter and to mercury emissions. It did not cover volatile organic compounds or greenhouse gases. I did suggest that we sort of mention at the end that we might look forward to working with the ministry on these. That wasn't adopted in the submission, but I don't think it's really a biggie because there probably will be at some stage standards coming out on those pollutants.
So maybe we could ask Claire. Claire is the person, Claire Patterson is the person that works in this area, and it's basically Phil's question was, Phil, if you'd like to ask Claire again.
Simply, why isn't sort of definition of pollutants, and for example, vehicle emissions being included? And Elizabeth's given me a pretty good explanation, and sounds like there'll be another round.
Yes, that's right. And this is the type of pollutant as well. So vehicles do emit particulate matter. And so in areas like Auckland, where they have much bigger transport network, this will affect their transport network. But not ours.
As far as it goes, I am, yeah, sure, everybody.
Any other councillor? Did we get a second? Yeah, we got a seconder. Did any other councillors wish to make a comment? All right. I will ask everybody to vote. All those in favour, please say. Oh, thank you, Claire. I don't think we need you anymore. Sorry about that. You can leave now. So all those in favour, please say aye. Anybody against? There being nobody speaking against, I declare that carried or voting against. Thank you. We're up to 9.3, and this is the submission on proposed southeastern marine protected areas, and I believe Councillor Southwood is going to present that. Thank you.
So we've been invited to put in a submission on the proposed Southeast Marine Protected Area consultation document, which has been sent to us from Department of Conservation and Fisheries New Zealand. We're proposing that the chair writes a submission, which we've all had a chance to look at. It's great to be able to provide support or to give support to the government proposals, which are for two new type 2 marine protected areas. These protected areas reduce the seabed disturb or protect from the seabed from fishing activity disturbance. And there is also a proposal for a bladder kelp protection area, which protects important habitat and nourishment for marine species. So altogether, we have some proposals here that will help our habitats, our coastal environment to thrive, and including giving support for our nationally endangered Hector's dolphins, which also come up in the subsequent item that we have today. In conjunction with marine mammal sanctuaries and also Hector's and Maori dolphin threat management plan, these are all important steps that are being taken to protect the biodiversity of our coastal areas. And I believe these are areas that are very much treasured both by mana whanua and also by communities at large. The review of our own coastal plan is now, we're getting that underway and will be coming through over the next few years, and that will give us a further opportunity to assess other impacts that come from other activities than fishing, and we can develop a plan, our own more regional plan to protect more widely, again in consultation with communities and iwi partners. And so we have a submission that essentially endorses and supports the proposals that are being put forward by the government. Thank you.
So I'll take it that you're moving that recommendation, Councillor Southworth. Who would like to second it? Seconded by Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie. Any questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There not being anyone against, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to the next item, which is item 9.5. Oh no, we've got 9.4. It's submissions to the Environmental Protection Authority and the Department of Conservation. And Councillor Elizabeth Mackenzie will now have a conversation around it, and it will be.
Yeah, so as co-lead of the Hazards, Risk and Resilience portfolio with Councillor Southworth, I would like to express my support for our submission to the Department of Conservation on the extension and protection of marine mammal sanctuaries in the Canterbury marine environment. The submission supports the extension of the marine mammal protection areas and prohibition of seismic surveying in these areas, and it recommends the use of permitting to manage exemptions for seismic surveys for urgent natural hazard assessment and the decommissioning of infrastructure. The submission is one in a series of submissions that Environment Canterbury has made over recent years supporting the protection of marine mammals in Canterbury. Secondly, I would also like to express my support for our submission to the Environmental Protection Agency in relation to the consent application for discharge to the marine environment by Beach Energy Resources NZ Limited. Although this issue was initially considered outside the scope of our jurisdiction, Council considered that a submission should still be made because due to the dynamic and interconnected nature of the marine environment, a discharge made outside of our jurisdiction could very easily end up having an effect inside our jurisdiction at some point in the future. Furthermore, the cumulative effects of granting many small discharge consents in isolation without having regard to the cumulative effect can have a devastating effect on the environment, as we've seen with our fresh water. Therefore, Council submitted that the application be considered in a holistic manner, that cumulative effects be considered, and that mana whenua be consulted early and often.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Is there any other councillor that wishes to speak to this petition, this resolution? Right, I take it that you're moving the resolution. Who's going to second it? Seconded by Councillor Lan Farn. Anybody else wishing to speak? All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There being nobody, that's declared carried. Thank you very much, everybody. We're moving on now to item on the agenda 9.5, changes to fees and changes policy, and it's about hearings of submission. And over to you, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you very much, Chair. So Council will be aware that we have our fees and charges policy out for consultation. So far there has been limited submissions on it, but and today we are agreeing on how we are to hear those submissions, either by appointing a delegation of councillors, and it has been suggested that we do this via the Regulation Hearing Committee, or as hearing this as a full council. My recommendation on this will be to delegate the function to the Regulation Hearings Committee. So I am recommending that we move item 9.5.1a at this time.
Thank you. Who would like to second that resolution? Seconded by Councillor Grant Edge. Would anybody like to speak to it? All right, well, I'll just move to putting it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There not being anyone against, that's declared carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Marshall. Now we're moving on to item 9.6, 6 monthly report to the ministers, April to October 2019. It's a bit of a further back period of time that we're reporting on, and Councillor Mackenzie, I think you're going to speak to this. Okay, it's you, Claire. Sorry, how did I get that? I got that completely wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, as our chair's introduced, this item's around the 6 monthly report to ministers. This was part of the requirement that the previous council had under the Environment Canterbury Act, and this is the actual last report that's been done there. I think it's on pages 106 to 140. It's a substantial report that covers a lot of the functions that we have within the organisation, and it's extremely good reading from the point of view of getting an understanding of the wide amount of work programs and what we actually do. So I'm not going to go into too much detail around that. I would just like to point out that there will be a slight adjustment to the letter referenced on page 107. The first paragraph there will have a slight amendment there, just to make it clear to the Minister that it is the last report coming in. I think also one thing that I would like to point out is that our council has felt that it's been quite a useful piece of work, and the Ministry of Environment officials have also appreciated getting the reports from Environment Canterbury and have indicated that they would like to continue getting some sort of reporting back to them on a regular basis. And we have looked at a new template and how that might actually be, or that future reporting might occur. We want to try and align it so that there's not, align it with our current reporting methods and our timeliness, and looking at perhaps 6 monthly reporting rather than quarterly reporting that we have. It has been quarterly, hasn't it?
6 monthly.
6 monthly. Well, we're looking at aligning it to the specific times that we have to do other reports, so there's not duplication. Just makes it a little bit more efficient. But not only acknowledging the work programs we are doing and the outcomes we're achieving, but also making sure that central government is aware, or the ministry is aware of the challenges too, and getting through some of the work programs that we have to do here at Environment Canterbury. So yeah, I would like to move that this council receives, what do? We adopt the 6 monthly report for release to the Ministry of the Environment and the Minister of Local Government, and we approve the new template for future reporting to be sent to the ministers for feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Claire Mackay. Are you going to second it?
Oh, sorry for cutting you off, Madam Chair. Yes, I am, and I'd just like to reiterate Claire's words. I mean, this is a bit quite clunky, this, because it's sort of like reading fish and chip wrapper for those new councillors, but it's really quite important to, I guess, the 4 councillors that were here last time, and that puts that to bed for us, which is good. You know, so that's behind us, and the great thing about this, in terms of the present ministers who we report to in this format, they've read it. They read through the report, which is quite interesting. So again, just reiterating what Claire says, I think, you know, the continuation of this and putting our matters in there, put before the ministers, is a really valuable thing for us to do going forward. So I'd like to second it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So that's moved in second. Would anybody else like to speak to this report? All right, that nobody is indicating, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? There being no one against, that's declared carried. Thank you all very much. We're now on to item 9.7, which is the Local Government New Zealand Annual General Meeting. This year, that's just an AGM. It's not a conference. Normally, if we were having a conference, we'd have around 5 delegates who would be delegated by council to attend. And it's a very good conference to go to, and I really recommend it. But we can't go this year, so this is a report delegating the Deputy Councillor Peter Scott to attend the annual general meeting for us, and giving him the authority to vote on the remits. After we have all considered the remits, and they're on the public agenda today, but we won't be considering them today. We'll be considering them later on, and we'll be receiving some staff advice around the content of some of those resolutions. So I'd like to move that. I'm calling for a seconded by Councillor Lan Farn. Anybody wishing to speak? Councillor Scott, do you want to say anything?
No, just no, not really, Madam Chair, but just to say that we will go through these remits one by one, so that everyone has a view, and we'll form a consensus on that. And even though I will have the button and have a view, I will be putting your view forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scott. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. There being no one against, I'll declare that carried. Now I'm going to make a decision that I think we should adjourn for lunch, because we've still got quite a lot to go, and I know the lunch is here, and I've been given very good advice from the two great staff either side of me that this is a good idea. So I think we'll do that, and I feel hungry. So I move that the council meeting be adjourned at 12:30, and we'll return when we return. So thank you very much. All right, the first thing we have to do is move into public excluded. I'll move from the chair that we move into public excluded, and that's been seconded by Councillor Marshall. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. That's carried. Thank you very much. All right. So what we're doing here is we're moving a resolution, the recommendation, the same recommendation we just moved before about this, except we're removing paragraph 7, and we're removing paragraph 7 as a resolution, the same as we resolved before. So I'm going to move from the chair that we confirm all of that. Who would like to second that? Seconded by Councillor Clearwater. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. No, is there anyone against? There's been nobody against. I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. We're up to item 11, notice of motion. I don't believe there are any notice of motions. In number 12, any other business? I don't believe there's any other business. There's no questions, formal questions on notice, I believe that's referring to. Number 14 is the next meeting is on Thursday, the 27th of August, and the closing karakia. Councillor Lan Fan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui o tāne. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nyako, te tinana, te wairua i te ara takata. Koia rā I rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia tina, tina. Homie, huie, tai ki e.